felt electrified, felt energized, felt brought back into myself. I was walking around getting the team fucking rocking. Ended up having a really solid game. I had 3 pulling plays in a row where I literally chopped these linebackers in half and had huge runs.
How does it feel to, like, as you're saying that, I'm sure there's like some imagery going on. Does that feel pretty good?
Oh my God, dude. It's like, that's what I dreamed of as a kid, being that superhero, that warrior, who's just leading the charge. I go in to have a meeting with our head team doc, and he says, Eb, I can't let you play the rest of the year. You need to go and have surgery to fix this. There's an infection in your disc. We're going to admit you to the hospital. I don't know if you'll ever be able to play again.
I know you've been referred to as the shaman of the team and the connector and the energy, and what you experienced had to be fucking crushing.
It was soul crushing, because I had spent my entire life not supporting myself, taking the world on my back and trying to make it all happen and prove to everybody how great and big and powerful and scary I was. It was the universe literally sitting me down. And it was an incredible lesson, because there was this really interesting thing of, there's 1,000 places, there's 1,000 things I'd rather be doing right now than sitting here doing this. I think my time in football's over.
That's gotta feel good to have that clarity in a career that it was your life.
Yeah.
But to just know.
But I always had this intuitive notion that there was a higher energy guiding my life. In the framework of the ethos of this podcast, The Great Unlearn, we spend so much time, we walk through so much of our life completely unconscious and asleep. We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are. Super grateful for the people that have just been here for me and supported me,
It's just a reminder that I don't have to go alone.
Having the courage to ask for help, having the courage to step out of isolation. The warrior's true essence is found in the vulnerability, jumping into the unknown over and over again, being willing to say, I don't know.
Well, damn. I never really know how I'm going to do my intro. And, so today I have on Eben Britton, and he comes here way through Khalil and Gino, a few Austin brothers here. And, for those who are tuning in right now, we dropped in for probably 30 minutes or so. And it was just some stuff that I'm going to circle back to, because it was so rich. There's so much that you have to share. And as I was doing kind of my research, I guess, on today's episode, because you and I don't know each other. We've never met. Today was the first time we've met. And it's rare that I have someone on that I don't know. But I knew when you were in town a month ago and Khalil had asked me to come join you guys, I was out of town, so I couldn't. But I just feel like there's something about this guy. I know nothing about you. Like, he's dope. And I want to get to know him. I want to be in his space. And then when you were coming back here, Gino's like, hey, if you want to have Eb on, he's coming here these dates. I'll set it up. I'm like, fuck yeah.
I love it.
So when you walk through that door and just, we had that embrace, I'm like, oh God, this is such a brother, and so good to have you here. And
absolutely, man.
And then you played a nice little joke on me where I was telling my wife Peyton about, I got this podcast, this guy, he seems super dope. He had this career in the NFL, and he's like totally on this spiritual journey. A lot of the stuff that he shares totally resonates. Like, I can't wait to have this guy. I'm just like, oh wow, that sounds really cool. And then you walk through the door and you're like, hey. Turns out they had met yesterday. And I was like, son of a bitch. What's going on here?
That was perfect.
It was. And you came bearing gifts.
Yes, sir.
Sun Life Organics. I have a shroom shake.
Got my matcha, a magnificent matcha.
And then I obviously have the layer stocked with Feel Free. So we get all the Feel Free we need.
Feeling free.
How has that, tell me about I'm curious, like, what is your experience with Feel Free?
Man,
and when was the first experience? Was it when you were in town a month ago, or?
actually, the first time I met Gino was probably December of 2020.
That's when I had my first Feel Free. Look at this, fucking very meta.
Yeah, totally. And Gino and one of my best friends in the world, a guy named Matt Farino, Gino and Matt, are doing a lot of business together, a lot of great business with the Den Ritual, which we can get into. But they were in West Hollywood. They were in LA. I came to visit Matt. He introduced me to Gino. Immediately, I was like, Gino's a soul brother. And they had just gone, they were doing some R&D for the Den at the time. And they were going to some wellness clinics in LA. And they gave me a little blue bottle of this stuff called Feel Free.
You've known about it that long?
No. And
election day?
Oh, it was election day.
Who gave it to you? In case you didn't know, Gino's here in the lair. He's just off mic. AJ gave it to you. Okay, awesome. And now AJ and Gino are part of the Feel Free team. I just found that out today.
So he gave it to me. I'm looking at the ingredients. It's kava and kratom. For me, as a guinea pig that I've been since, I don't know, I was probably 14, experimenting.
You and me both.
I had some experiences with kratom. Hadn't had many with kava. Hadn't really liked kratom.
Mm-hmm.
Kratom interacts with our opioid receptors. I actually did a cannabis genetics panel where I did a whole DNA test that gave me a really interesting reading on how my body and my DNA interacts with cannabinoids. I can put you in touch with that guy, Len.
What's the,
It's called Endocanna Health.
Okay.
That's a podcast in itself. Len is the man as well. He's a brother in LA.
We'll link to that in the show notes. That's great.
Yeah. And so I did this really fascinating panel. And one of the things that it brought up was that I am highly sensitive to opiates, and I'm highly sensitive. I have an unusually high propensity to experience withdrawal symptoms, which aligned completely when it comes to opiates, which aligned completely with my experience using opiates during my NFL career. Severe withdrawal symptoms within 3 days of taking prescribed dosages of Vicodin, Percocet, really bad.
And you were, I remember seeing that you were having to take a couple every couple of hours, the Vicodin. And
yeah, I mean, during some of my more intense injuries, my shoulder surgery, back surgery, and those pills always gave me migraines, made me feel insane, brought me to this, I had this low hum of rage right below the surface where I'd just be snapping at people that were the closest people in my life. My mother, my girlfriend, wife at the time, and
not girlfriend and wife at the same time.
Yeah. Both. Girlfriend who turned into my wife.
We're in Austin,
yeah,
so
I know. That happens. But no, not in my case. Girlfriend who turned into my wife. And in those very vulnerable states where I literally needed help getting dressed. I needed help putting my socks and my pants on. It was, and I would find myself lashing out at them. And I remember having this very, very, very heavy experience of watching myself snap and going, whoa, who is this guy? This is not me. This is not who I am. And having a very clear indication in my mind of when I took that pill, my entire personality changed. And I became this very edgy, very irritable, very angry individual. And as an athlete, when you're dealing with injuries and you're already in this physically vulnerable state, now you're taking this thing that's been prescribed to you by a doctor, a person that you trust, to deal with the pain. And now not only are you physically vulnerable, but now you're in this emotionally chaotic state. And not only that, but these pills actually inhibit the healing process. They send your whole system into a chemical chaos. And I had this very visceral, very real experience of that during my football career. And so that aligned very much with what this cannabis DNA panel showed me. So when I got the feel free, I thought to myself, maybe it'll be good. I don't know. They gave me a bottle. I took it home, didn't try it, put it in the fridge. I think the next day, because they were speaking so highly of it, I said, what the hell? I'm going to take it. I'm going to try it. I tried it, and I felt elated. I felt energized. I felt blissful. I felt happy. I felt grounded. I felt fantastic. I felt free, and didn't get it again. I hadn't had it again until I think I came back here about a month ago, or I came to Austin about a month ago. So fast forward 2 years, and I'm coming to see Gino and Matt in Austin, and we're having a semi business pleasure boys week, get together, round the troops, have a good time, talk about the den, see how I can come in and contribute and support and be a part of it. And I met Khalil, got off the plane. We went to have a steak with Khalil at ALC. And next thing I know, I've got another feel free. And I think I've had one a day ever since. And honestly, man, I think there's nothing quite like it. It's a fantastic product. It makes me feel super happy, super joyful, super energized, very much in the flow. My brain is turned on in a way. I took a lot of Adderall during my NFL career.
And what was the reason for that? Was it for energy? Was it?
So my second season in the NFL, I talk about this in the book. Right before training camp, I experienced a massive herniation of L5-S1 disc in my back. We were doing these Kaiser air squats with a massive amount of weight, explosive movements, dropping down and exploding up as fast as we could. I stepped into the machine, wasn't set in my core, dropped down, felt this tube of toothpaste literally squirt into my right hip butt cheek.
That was such a great description, by the way. I got that when you said that. So well done on the word play there.
Thank you. And I came out and I felt as though somebody had ripped my body in half and put my torso on backwards. I felt so discombobulated physically. And the guy who I was working with, he saw it happen and was like, whoa, dude, what happened there? And I was like, I don't know. I feel like I couldn't tell if I tore my glute or pulled my hamstring. And so I'm feeling this super confusing physiological experience. We finish up with those squats, and this is literally the last workout before summer work is over, before going into training camp. And I'm at the fucking top of my game. Had done OTAs, was just dominant. I was surfing. It was the height of my physical prowess as an athlete.
It sounds like you were able to like kind of take care of all the kind of structural like working out, but get into a flow of just life and loving it and working hard. And it's like fucking everything's hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah. And then also it was totally cosmic,
That's right. Of course. We know that.
Yeah.
At least now we do.
So it was completely the medicine I needed, because I had spent my entire life not supporting myself and taking the world on my back and trying to make it all happen and prove to everybody how fucking great and big and powerful and scary I was. And it was the universe literally sitting me down. And And so we went out to run sprints, and I went out to run sprints, and I'm getting ready to have an all-pro year. That's where I was at. Guys were laughing. I talk about it again in the book about guys were literally laughing about, they were like, Eb, you're the golden child.
Golden child, yeah.
You can do no wrong. And I went from being the golden child to being basically an invalid because my game was totally disrupted. So we went out to run sprints. I end up actually pulling my hamstring in the sprints, go into the training room, and they're like, yeah, you pulled your hamstring. But I'm like, yeah, there's something else going on. They do a few tests and they're like, yeah, I think it looks like you've herniated your disc. And I'm like, what? You know, I'm about to go on vacation the next day. We're going to our family lake house in New Hampshire. It's just like totally, you might as well have dropped a bomb on my life.
In an instant.
In an instant. It was like that, you know? And how did we get here? Adderall. So I still get to go on vacation, but it was one of those things where if you've ever experienced a herniated disc with severe sciatic nerve pain or any type of severe nerve pain where finally, I mean, to kind of blend timelines, later on when I ended up having back surgery, the back surgeon, who did a beautiful job, said that the disc was so mashed into the nerve that he couldn't see where the disc ended and the nerve began. And that summer, and here I am, I'm doing yoga, I'm doing all the stuff, man. And I remember just waking up every day and I'm in excruciating pain. I couldn't drive.
But couldn't put your socks on,
that shit, right? I couldn't feel my right foot on the ground, you know? And so come back for training camp and everybody, the coaches are like, dude, what happened? What's going on? I'm like, I herniated my disc. I'm doing the best I can. I can't really feel my right foot on the ground. My right leg is starting to completely, what's the word? Atrophy. All my right leg muscles, even to this day, my right calf is much more underdeveloped compared to my left.
And that's because of the nerve or something?
Yeah, the nerve. So, I mean, interestingly, it's interesting to, when you realize how much of an impact our nervous system has on our musculature and our physiology. And so that nerve impingement was causing numbness in my foot, severe, like a lightning bolt of pain through my right glute, down through my hamstring, the back of my knee, all the way down into my toes. And so I had no power in my right leg. I had no energy, muscular energy in it. And so the muscles are starting to atrophy. And I'd come out of spring ball at the top of my game. I came into training camp, the worst I've ever been, a shadow of myself. And not only that, but I'm in the training room protocol of waking up at 5:00 in the morning to get into the training room by 5:30 to start my rehab program, because I'm still playing. I don't have I'm still the starting right tackle. I don't have the luxury of just saying, you know what, I'm going to take 3 months off, 6 months off, get this thing right. It's no, we're going in, we're doing hot tubs, cold tubs, stim machines, stim and ice, massage, stretching routine, core routine, all of these things to stabilize and maximize the strength and the power in the leg. So I'm just exhausted. And this is day in, day out, through training camp, through the first 6 weeks of the season. Finally, it was a bit of a blessing. We're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'll back up to a couple weeks before that. It's a Monday night game. We're playing the Tennessee Titans, and I'm starting at right tackle. I'm exhausted. emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. I'm I'm just crumbling. And I would have rather been anywhere else but there. And it's Monday night, and I walk into the stadium, and I go to one of my teammates and I say, "Hey man, I am really struggling. Can I get something from you?" And I knew he had Adderall, he had taken it. And he said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "I don't know, maybe Adderall." And he said, "Okay, well, couple things you need to know. If you take an Adderall tonight and you get drug tested tomorrow, you'll test positive for a banned substance." I said, "Okay, so what does that mean as far as how do I navigate that?" And he said, "Well, if you want to take Adderall, you need to get a therapeutic use exemption, a TUE, which means you basically go through a doctor. They do tests, they do a little rundown of your history, where you're at, and basically they'll prescribe you Adderall through a TUE, a therapeutic use exemption that says you need this for XYZ. And the league will honor that as this is a medicinal therapeutic medicine for you and whatever you're dealing with."
And how, so drug testing the next day, how many of the 53 guys are getting drug tested?
Probably 35 to 55% of the team.
So you're not great odds for you if you're going to try to roll the dice.
Yeah. Frequently, you're probably getting drug tested. Now when I was playing, it was a 17-week season. Now I think it's like a 19-week season because they've added one extra game. You're probably getting tested for performance enhancers 5 to 10 times a season. And some guys, interestingly, for whatever reason, are always on the list. And some guys get tested less. I was in kind of the middle. And that's a whole hilarious comedy in itself. The piss man comes and everybody's talking shit. It's like one of my incredible teammates, guy Tony Pashos, about 6'8", 350 pounds, Greek monster, great mentor for me as a rookie offensive lineman. He would get the notice that he had to go do the drug test, and he would just walk through the halls yelling, "Piss man trying to look at my dick." And the guy is just like, what do I even say? These fucking incredible athletes are just hate us,
Oh, God.
So that was just like one of the hilarious dynamics of that experience. But so back into that moment, I say, "You know what, dude? I need it. I'll take it. I'll take the chances. I'll get a TUE. I'll do what I got to do." Because I was going to be playing against a guy named Jason Babin, who was leading the NFL in sacks.
Oh shit. Yeah. Wow.
And this is probably week 5 or 6, and he already had like 8 or 9 sacks, having a monster year. And I knew I had to be at my best, and I was already not at my best, So I got 2 Adderall from him, took 1, and immediately I was just brought out of the darkness. It was like, holy shit. I had energy. My body felt electric. The pain in my body was gone, which was really interesting. And I was part of a documentary on Netflix that people can check out called Take Your Pills. It's all about Adderall and amphetamine, prescription amphetamines. And one of the doctors that they have on that documentary actually talks about the pain-reducing element of Adderall and amphetamines as it pertains to athletes. And I definitely experienced that. whether it's a physiological blockage of the pain receptors or simply it elevates you out of that pain state mentally so that you're not thinking about it, you're not feeling it. I'm not sure, but it definitely had that effect for me. So I took one, felt electrified, felt energized, felt brought back into myself. I was walking around getting the team fucking rocking. Ended up having a really solid game, gave up no sacks.
Nice.
But looking back, you know, not only was I exhausted, but leading up to that time, I was in a very reduced cognitive state. My cognitive function was really low. I was very depressed. I was walking around in a fog most days. And Adderall really lifted me up out of that. Now, I became super dependent on it because it became this thing where I couldn't fathom being at work, sitting through meetings without taking Adderall. And so I ended up taking the Adderall. It really helped my play. It in that just super reduced physical state where I just wasn't at my best. It helped me get to a place where I felt like I could compete again. And so it became, I went and got the therapeutic use exemption. I didn't get tested the next day. It all sort of worked in my favor, sort of, so to speak.
Sure.
And even my wife said, she was like, you became you again. Like you would come home, you'd engage with me. And we had just had our daughter, Sandy. And I'd come home, I'd engage with the household stuff. Whereas before I would just go and collapse on the couch. And so it was very helpful and beneficial for a minute, but it became this thing where I became so dependent on it. And then I would start and then I was on Vyvanse, which is a time-released Adderall, and then and supplementing that with Adderall. And so I was taking probably 100 to 120 milligrams of Adderall a day.
I've only had it once. I was in Vegas, and whatever the bars are, I think I took a quarter.
And you were lit.
And I was good.
Yeah.
Like this, maybe I shouldn't do this again.
Yeah, I think if I took it today, I'd be shot straight into a panic attack. You know, it's just, and so, but what would happen was around 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I would just fall straight off a cliff. Depression, anxiety, a black hole of despair. And it's because my life became so robotic and mechanized. Like my life became setting up a task list for every day. And I'd have the task list done by noon. And then I would find myself completely purposeless, looking at my life going, what do I do now? You know, I've gotten my workout in. I did the things. I did the stuff. And now I just feel like I have nowhere to go. And I'm fucking flying still. So I would just, it was like literally plummeting into this black hole. And then the alcohol would come in and the weed would come in and all the stuff to just wind me down. And it became that vicious cycle for the next, really, I mean, honestly, 5 years.
Until you retired?
Till I retired. And then I moved back to California, and cannabis, I was able to start playing with various cannabis strains. And I found that if I found, with sativas, really nice sativas like Tangy or Jack Herrera, they would give me that thing that I was looking for, that cognitive uplift with a nice, cool energy that wasn't bookended with the 3 o'clock collapse. So cannabis really helped me get off all the pills at the end of the day.
Do you feel like this, I know this sounds like a bit of a plug for Feel Free, but I'm really curious, going through that experience, do you think something like Feel Free would have been
I wish I had. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish I had Feel Free. at that time.
I mean, we've heard people, adults and like kids in college, who are like, "Fuck, like this makes me feel what I feel with Adderall." And
Absolutely,
it's obviously way safer.
Absolutely,
but I don't have my own personal experience.
Yeah.
With it.
Oh, definitely. It definitely has that clean, calm, focused energy that I think anyone who's experiencing cognitive dysfunction would benefits from. You know, so I start taking Adderall. I'm in this vicious cycle. Thank God, a couple weeks later, we're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm starting at right tackle. And now at this point, I'm in so much pain, so exhausted. I'm taking Adderall and Vicodin before the game, and we're playing in Kansas City. In Kansas City, there's no more volatile environment in the world than Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium. And it's really an incredible experience, even as a visiting player, to go there. And they're doing the national anthem. And at the end, where it's "in the home of the," and instead of "Brave," the entire stadium yells "Chiefs," and it's just like your whole rib cage and your sternum are vibrating. You know, it's incredible. So we're playing the Chiefs. It's midway through the second quarter. It's an outside zone block, and they play a 3-4. So I've got a head up defensive end. A 3-4 defense is, if you don't know, there's a nose on the center, head up on the center, and they're playing a 2-gap scheme. And then they've got a 4-eye or a 5 technique inside shade to head up on the offensive tackles. And then they've got 2 outside linebackers. So on this particular play, my assignment is to punch through the outside shoulder of that 5 technique on my way up to the Mike linebacker. So I take my step, punch through this D end that's in front of me, work my way up to this linebacker. This tidal wave of bodies is rolling through, catches my feet. I land on my elbow at a right angle. My shoulder dislocates, pops out of the socket. I get up and I can't move my arm. And from the time I was a sophomore in high school, my right shoulder would subluxate. So it would pop out of the socket and pop back in, which was excruciatingly painful.
Oh, each time that happened?
Yeah, and that would happen 1 or 2 times a season. But I had a very specific regimen of band work to tighten up all those little muscles in there to keep my shoulder nice and tight. So, but it had never fully dislocated. So it was completely dislocated. I pop it back in.
By yourself?
Right then. Yeah, I just kind of I was like, okay, popped it back in. We finished the drive, score a touchdown, run off the field. We're on the sideline. I yelled to one of my favorite trainers of all time, Justin. I'm like, Justin, I just dislocated my shoulder. I need a harness ASAP, because we're going to be back on the field in about 5 minutes for a 2-minute drill going into halftime. And he's just looking at me like, I'm like, dude, hurry the fuck up. We're about to go, man. You know? And he's like, wait, should I get the I'm like, bro, just go. I'm fine. Get me a harness. And so it's like a NASCAR tire change. Throw off my helmet, my shoulder pads. He straps this thing on my shoulder, wrap it up. By the time I'm getting my shoulder pads buckled back up, I'm putting my helmet on, I'm running back out on the field for this 2-minute drill. Second pass play of the drive. I'm pass blocking against Mike Vrabel, Hall of Famer, now head coach of the Tennessee Titans. I go to punch. He swipes my arm. It comes out of the socket again. And this time, because I'm in a harness, I can't get it back in.
Oh, shit.
So it's stuck out of the socket. And they knew that the coaches had kind of been ready. So my backup, Jordan, was ready to go. So I'm running off the field, tapping my helmet. He's running on the field. I went immediately.
And it's a 2-minute drill, so there's like fucking time.
Yeah, there's no time. Yeah. There's no time. Jordan's basically running on the field and getting set at right tackle. So I run straight to the bench, and it took all 3 team doctors about 5 minutes to get my shoulder back into the socket.
After they got the harness off, or with the harness on?
I can't remember. That's a good question. They might. I don't think we could get my shoulder pads off because my shoulder was out of the socket.
With 3 guys, yeah, the harness may have still been on.
Yeah. So, and they're yelling. They're like, it's so chaotic, and it's just like on the battlefield. It's so intense.
And you're in Kansas City, so that place is going nuts. So you guys can't hear each other.
And we're down by like 3 touchdowns. It's a mess. And they're like, Eb, we got to get you into the locker room. I'm like, fuck that. Just get it in. And finally they grind it back in. I felt it like.
I was going to say, was it pretty painful?
I was on so much stuff that it was just it was more disturbing, the sensation of that grinding back into the socket than anything else.
Fucking disturbing hearing you fucking describe it.
So they finally get it back in. They say, Eb, let's get you inside, get a shower, get you out of these pads, put you in a sling, get you into sweats. You're done for the day. And even then I'm thinking to myself, I'll be ready for Dallas next week. I'll be fine. They pop a couple more Vicodin. I throw a dip in, watch the rest of the game from the sidelines in sweats. And after the game, I go in to have a meeting with our head team doc. And he says, Eb, I can't let you play the rest of the year. You need to go and have surgery to fix this. And it was devastating, man. It was the first time in my career ever where someone was telling me I wasn't going to be able to play because of an injury. And so, but it was the right move. It was, I had a 280-degree tear of my labrum. And if you understand the anatomy of the shoulder, there's not much. Your shoulder is a super fluid joint. There's not anything really holding it in there. You've got the top of your humerus, which basically just sits in this little piece of cartilage, your labrum, that looks like a little disc. And it just sits in there, and it's all soft tissue. And so I had all kinds of tears and ligaments, stretched and fucked up, torn. And so I there was no other way to go but to have shoulder surgery. So that was the first time in my life, broke down into tears, called my mom, called my wife, called everybody and said, tore my labrum, dislocated my shoulder, going to have season-ending shoulder surgery, put me on IR. But it was such a blessing because I was so cooked from that day in, day out grind of rehabilitating my back. So now I have the back and the shoulder. And the interesting thing was I went down to Alabama, saw Dr. Andrews. James Andrews is one of the... Yesterday's
guest, Trey Hardy, went and had his shoulder or his elbow done.
By Dr. James. Yeah. Dr. James, he's a wizard. He's an orthopedic wizard, absolutely one of the best in the business. And he did an incredible job. My right shoulder never had any problems with it since. And said, Eben, I gave you the Drew Brees special, which is 11 anchors and all kinds of stuff locked down. A slap repair is what they call it. So that was a blessing, but my back never got a chance to heal. We never addressed the back. My shoulder became great and was fine afterwards. But so I came back the next year. Long story short, I always end up talking because it's such an odyssey, my NFL career.
Yes, sir.
So the next season was the lockout. The owners locked the players out because we couldn't come to terms on a new collective bargaining agreement. So there was no off season. So I actually went back to Arizona where I played my college ball, Wildcats, U of A, and finished my degree, did the rest of my rehab there, but never fixed my back. We came right back to training camp. Same old story. Had no power in my right leg. I'm starting at right tackle. I'd go in for 3 plays and have to come out because I literally couldn't feel my right foot on the ground. After about day 3 in pads, our head coach, Jack Del Rio, who I absolutely love, one of my all-time favorite coaches, he came up to me, he said, Eb, I want you to just, and at that point I had 3 epidurals in my back,
Ooh.
which did nothing.
Ah.
I mean, honestly, any young athlete who's dealing with back pain or herniated discs, epidurals are a complete waste of time, honestly. I mean, it's just, whatever it's supposed to do, it doesn't do that. Didn't do anything for me. Maybe some people have had some success with it, but I'd had 3 epidurals, really didn't do anything. So Jack came to me and said, Eb, we really need you this season, man. We need you at your best. I want you to just go have surgery, get this thing cleaned up, come back, just get it done because we need you, you know? So the next week I flew up to North Carolina, had back surgery with a guy named Dr. Brigham, who's one of the best in the world. He actually passed away about a year after doing my surgery. God bless him. Rest in peace, Dr. Brigham. But did the surgery. I came out of it, and it was like someone had pulled the piece of glass out of the electrical circuitry of my body. It was that static. I didn't realize how much, not only was I in that physical pain, but there was this constant low hum of my nervous system was just always on edge for the last 2 years because of this pain. And it was all gone when I came out of surgery. It was a really quick recovery. I was back on the field in literally about a month, starting, playing the best ball I had played since my rookie year. And at that time, the guy who came in to replace me at right tackle was doing a really good job, and we didn't have a left guard. So they asked me, Eb, would you be willing to play left guard? My offensive line coach at the time, Andy Heck, love Andy Heck. He's won a Super Bowl now with Kansas City. He went to Kansas City since leaving Jacksonville. And he said to me, Eb, when you were coming out of college, I thought you would be an all-pro guard. So I think this could be a really good move for you. And me, in my athletic ability, really translated well to playing inside because I'm super athletic, super quick, super powerful, and I could really leverage that, my body type and my God-given talents in that inside position. At tackle, you're really out on an island. At guard, it's like a fist fight in a phone booth.
Oh, that makes sense.
And so I was having just a terrific season. Had an incredible game against Carolina Panthers, and then we played the Bengals, and I had 3 pulling plays in a row where I literally chopped these linebackers in half and had huge runs right off my ass. And our offensive coordinator.
How does it feel to, like, as you're saying that, I'm sure there's like some imagery going on. Does that feel pretty good?
Oh my God, dude. It's like, that's what I dreamed of as a kid, being that superhero, that warrior, who's just leading the charge. And I loved it. I loved playing left guard. It was such a great move for me. But 11 weeks after surgery, we're in Pittsburgh, and I can't get out of bed.
Like out of nowhere, you can't get out of bed, or like you've been...
After the Cincinnati game, something was weird. I felt like I cracked my hip, or I couldn't really tell what was going on. And it was sort of this very, very slow drip of inhibition, for lack of a better term, where slowly but surely I just felt more pain, and I couldn't really tell what it was. So we get to Pittsburgh, and I'm back starting at right tackle against the Steelers, because it was kind of like a year where things were in flux and I was going where I was needed most. And
that happens often in the offensive line. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. As there's injuries and you got to plug guys in and, use the personnel that you have. So I was starting at right tackle. We're in Pittsburgh. I literally can't get out of bed. And I'm like, fuck. I had to like leverage myself on the sink to sit down on the toilet. I was like, holy shit, what's going on? And I thought to myself, no worries. We'll do the stuff. We'll get to the facility early. I'll get the treatment. I'll pop the pills. I'll be ready to go by game time. And it was difficult to walk, honestly. And first thing we do, we get to Heinz Field. I go straight into the training room, see my guy, Justin. He starts working on me, puts me on the table, gets a heat pack on there right away. Then gets the Theragun, starts working it, stem machine, just all the stuff. And after about 45 minutes on the table, I went to push myself up, could barely get off the table. And I'm like, holy shit, dude, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, you know what? I'll be fine. Sit down in front of my locker. I lay on my back. I'm doing my stretches. I close my eyes. I open my eyes, and it's Andy Heck, my O-line coach, our offensive coordinator, our head coach, looking down on me going, Eb, are you going to be able to go? And I'm like, yeah. And I tried to get up. I couldn't get up. And they're like, you're not going today. And they suited up one of the rookies, and he ended up playing. And so I ended up not playing that game. The next day, go have an MRI. Nothing shows up. It's all kind of normal. Coaches are like, hey, man, you've been kicking ass. Maybe you came back too fast. You're just worn out. We're going to give you a week off. We need you for next Monday against Baltimore. Just take it easy. They put me on some sort of steroid pack to kind of expedite whatever healing needed to happen. Didn't really do anything. It actually was getting worse and worse. And after the Baltimore game, it was a Monday night game. I didn't play. I go to the facility and park my car, and I'm walking through the player parking lot, and my back seizes up to such an extent that I'm brought to my knees. And I had to have two of my teammates literally help me walk into the training room. And they're like, Eb, what's going on? I'm like, dude, I don't know, but my back just seized up completely. My knees buckled. I don't know what's going on. Go and have another MRI. Still nothing. It's weird. Okay, you need a little more time. A few days later, it's Friday. They say, Eb, let's just go get one more MRI. I go and get an MRI early in the morning, about 6 a.m. I'm in there to get the MRI so that I can be at meetings by 7:30 start time. And I come out of the MRI, and someone was supposed to be there to pick me up to bring me back to the facility. No one's there. The nurse comes in and says, Nurse Nancy's coming to see you. And I'm like, why the fuck is Nurse Nancy coming to see me?
She giving me a ride?
Yeah. And they brought me into this room that I had never been in before. It was like a holding area. And so I'm sitting there in this room. No one's talking to me. I don't know what's going on. Nurse Nancy comes in, and she's got this look on her face, like she's so concerned. And she says to me, Dr. So-and-so, who was our team doctor back specialist, he's coming in. I think we're going to admit you to the hospital. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? Admit me to the hospital. You're not admitting me to the hospital. And she's like, Dr. X will explain everything to you. And I'm just getting kind of pissed off. So he comes in and he says, Eben, there's an infection in your disc. We're going to admit you to the hospital. I don't know if you'll ever be able to play again. Those were his words. And I was like, dude, fuck you. Get the fuck out of my face. I never want to see you again, talk to you again. And I ended up being admitted to the hospital. I had eaten at that point, and they wanted to do a biopsy of the disc to find out what it was. And I said, fuck that. I've been poked, prodded, cut open. I'm not fucking doing that. I don't care. They're like, well, if you don't do the biopsy today, we have to wait till Monday. I'm like, well, we're fucking waiting till Monday when you can juice me up and I don't have to experience a fucking big ass needle going into my back and you're going to pull out a piece of the disc.
Oh, because you need to be fasted for that.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
So to put me into the twilight.
Yeah.
So I ended up spending the weekend in the hospital, and Monday they bring me in, do the biopsy. And it seems like it's not really getting any worse, not getting any better, but it had kind of plateaued. So it's Halloween night. And at this point, my mom's been there. My wife has been there, like sleeping next to me. It's just a fucking, it's totally insane. It's Halloween night. And my wife knows how much I love Halloween. Halloween's like my favorite holiday. And she goes to the nurses and she's like, we need to get Eben out of here. He's fine. There's nothing wrong. You haven't found anything. He needs to be able to go home and be with his family.
And celebrate fucking Halloween.
Yeah, and fucking celebrate his favorite day. God bless her. And they're like, okay. They get me out of there. I go home, literally get to my house, and I collapse walking to my couch. And I'm stuck on the floor.
You ain't getting a costume on tonight.
Yeah. And my mom is like telling my brother, go get so-and-so to help pick Eb up. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm like literally face down in my living room. Can't get up. Somehow, finally, I muscle my way up, get on the couch. And it took a week. Finally, 7 days later, we get a call. And the guy says, we were going to throw away the culture. And it was cloudy. And we figured out what the infection was. And so thank God it wasn't MRSA or staph. It was the same bacteria that causes acne had gotten in there. So it was a very low virulent bacteria. That's why it was such a slow progression. And they said, we need you to come in. We're going to get you on 8 weeks of intravenous antibiotics. And so that was kind of the end of season number 3 after, and so I went on 8 weeks of intravenous antibiotics. Every day a nurse would come to my house and inject me with this stuff that was just like acid. And occasionally they'd miss the vein and fucking pump it under my skin and it would just burn like, I lost about 30 pounds, dropped down to about 270. At that time, everything was falling apart. The team, our head coach got fired. The team got sold. I'm watching every morning. I would wake up and watch the fucking Today Show. That was kind of my morning ritual, hilariously.
Yeah, that shows where you were.
Yeah, exactly. And this one morning I wake up, turn it on, and it's the local news, and they're talking about Jack Del Rio's been fired. Wayne Weaver has sold the team to Shad Khan, and it's like the whole thing was just obliterated. And, it was just the end of an era. So I ended up doing the therapy, worked my ass off, came back. New head coach didn't agree with me, didn't agree with him. He didn't really like me for various reasons. To this day, I don't exactly know why, but it felt like from day one, he just kind of had it out for me. And almost after that season 4, I got benched halfway through the season because I just wasn't at my best, coming out of that back injury and then the infection. And I needed a year of recovery, and I just came back. Game 1, I got a guy thrown into my left ankle, had a low-high ankle sprain that I rushed back from, got my ass kicked against the Bengals. I was, made one of the examples of why we were 2-14 and got benched halfway through the season. Ended up, basically I'd wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, turn my volcano on, rip it, rip about 3 bags, drive to the facility, stoned to the bone. And just, I was like, fuck you, fuck everybody. No one would really talk to me.
Oh, fuck, dude.
You know, I had gone from being team captain to basically exiled. My whole love and passion for football was crushed. At the end of that season, I was honestly considering just being completely done. I had a few phone calls. My wife was like, hey, you know, I support you. It would be great to get another year.
Yep.
Financially, but whatever you need to do, I think, you know, I've got your back. My dad said the same thing, but I talked to a guy, Brad Meester, who was a 14-year vet. He said to me, Eb, every year I question whether or not I actually want to come back. And I just show up, I take it one day at a time, and I find my love for the game again. He said, Eb, maybe you give it a shot, go to another team, you get really inspired, fall in love with the game again, and you're back in it. Or maybe you go to another team and you remember you are validated in your feeling of being done. And that's cool too. But just give it one more shot. So I had a workout with Seattle. They flew me out to Seattle, had a workout. They weren't quite ready to sign me. I flew back to Jacksonville. Literally the next day, flew to Chicago, did a workout with the Bears. They wanted to sign me right away. And I ended up had a really magical year, my 5th season with the Chicago Bears. It was just an incredible environment. It was so cool to be a part of a team with such incredible history in the city. And it was the fans. It was just, there's nothing like playing, I think, for any Chicago sports team, especially the Bears.
And as you were dropping into Chicago, I was actually leaving. I left in 2013.
Amazing, dude. Amazing.
Who was your coach back then?
It was Mark Tressman. So Lovie Smith had been fired.
And how was he as a coach?
Mark?
Yeah.
Really great at first. High energy, very inspired, team guy. I really loved him, honestly. And that first year, we had a record-setting offense. I carved out a really nice role for myself as this 6th-man swing tackle, but I ended up becoming this monster tight end where they'd bring me in for 20 to 30 plays a game as an extra blocker and even go out for passes here and there. And
Did you have any receptions?
No, I didn't. A
hell of a decoy, though.
Yeah, exactly. But actually, I had such an awesome season that at the end of the year, the Chicago Tribune wrote this whole article about how much more productive the offense was when I came in. And just like run block, you know, and the run game, run efficiency, pass efficiency. And so it was really a year where I found my love for the game again. The next year came back signed another 1-year deal. And that magic had sort of dissolved. You know, there was a lot of ego. We weren't quite installing the plays the way they had done it in the first year. Mark really, I love Mark to death, honestly, but I think he lost control of the team, and we had a lot of big personalities, and he just lost the trust and the faith of the guys, and it all just fell apart. And that was my final season in the NFL. You know, it was sort of that 5th year, first year in Chicago was that incredible, inspired, love-filled experience in football that I really needed to finish off my football career. And then the next year was like, oh yeah, this is a business at the end of the day.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah. Dude, that's an incredible share. A lot coming up for me. For one, if I can recall, but you know, I think one of the unintended consequences of you sharing your journey is, at least for me, I'm a football fan. I grew up in Maine. I'm a Patriots fan, right? So I've been fortunate. I've been fortunate in that regard, but just to understand when these guys come back from injury, you know, and just your journey is not, you know, kind of exclusive to you. I mean, this is what happens.
Oh, yeah.
You have to come back. And just to understand all that you guys deal with. And so thanks. I mean, that helps me a lot. I'm a different fan than I was years ago.
Yeah.
I just
me
enjoy
too.
it.
Yeah.
But and just in how I've been getting to know you and understanding your role within the team and I know you've been referred to as the shaman of the team and the connector and the energy, and what you experienced in year 4 had to be fucking crushing.
It was soul crushing. It was, we're playing the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm rushing back from this ankle injury. And all week I'm telling the trainers, I'm telling the coaches, like, look, dude, I'm starting at left guard. I can't push off my left foot to go inside to the right. And they're like, it'll be okay. We'll tape it. We'll give you some Toradol. We'll get through it. You'll be fine. And I'm like, okay. I'm the ultimate team guy. This was my family. And I'm in there, and I'm just getting my ass kicked by Geno Atkins, who's an unbelievable all-pro defensive tackle for the Bengals, who the year before I'd really had an incredible game against. Like, could say I dominated him a year earlier, and then he's just fucking eating me alive. And there were 3 plays in a row right before the half where he beat me inside because I couldn't move to my right.
So what's it like? You've had the experience of dominance, especially, the year before. What's it like the first time that happened? I mean, I'm sure he's having his way with you a bit anyway, but like the first play, and then like what's going through your mind at that point?
Oh,
like
it's
fucking
just
throwing interceptions so I can get off the field. Like what?
It's like you're in a total survival mode. Like what? How can I just get in this guy's way?
Is there panic, anxiety?
Oh, panic, anxiety. It's desperation. It's horror. It's shame. It's guilt. It's, and I'm just, and so the half ends. We go into the locker room, and I could hear there was something going on outside in the hallway. And it was my O-line coach and the head coach literally having a fight. Sounded like they were about to it was like a bar fight happening. And they come in, my O-line comes in, and he's just huffed. And he said, Eb, we're going to sit you down. And it was this moment of just complete heartbreak, soul-crushing experience. All the confidence that I had, which is, as an offensive lineman, there's no more important ingredient in your makeup than your confidence. And my confidence completely collapsed. And, that was one thing. And then the head coach comes in and is like, Eb, we rushed you back. We're going to sit you down. And I've got like tears streaming down, choked up. I'm completely soul crushed. And at the end of the game, in the fucking media, the head coach says, yeah, the left guard spot is going to be up for grabs. And I'm just like, really? Like, dude, I just fucking gave it everything I had. I was telling you all week, my ankle's no good. I can't move inside. And I rushed back for you guys. I did it for the team. I did it for my fucking coaches. I did it for this organization. I did it to be there. And now you're fucking literally, you tell me to my face, you're just going to sit me down because we rushed back and I wasn't quite ready to come back. And now you're saying that my play was so poor that now the left guard spot is up for grabs. That was just completely soul crushing. And it was really that sensation of just, I wanted nothing to do with it. I wanted to be anywhere but there. I had completely lost all faith. The business of football was really beginning to rear its ugly head. And it was an incredible lesson. It was an incredible life experience for me on many levels, because there was this really interesting thing of emotional energy and hearing people say words to you, but seeing their energy was completely somewhere else. And knowing that you're saying this to me, but you're really not meaning that. You're literally telling me without the words that I'm no longer of use to this team.
And you were able to pick up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And I could just feel the complete disconnect, from going from the golden child to completely exiled, and the team captain and the guy, the energy center of the team. And so that was a really incredible experience. Another incredible layer of that experience was the corporate aspect of sports, professional sports, and the business of football. And seeing that at the end of the day, unfortunately, as much as these guys tell me they love me and how great I am, they have jobs to keep. And that takes precedence over their love of me, however heartfelt that truly is or not. And that was a reoccurring sensation in my last year in Chicago. I mean, another injury odyssey that I didn't mention was around the bye week in my last year in Chicago. My appendix exploded. I was back in LA and my high school was retiring my jersey, and I'm doubled over in pain after the memorial watching the game, and I don't know what's going on anyway. The day I was supposed to fly back to Chicago, I said, I don't think I can get on this plane. I went to the emergency room. Immediately, they did a CAT scan. They're like, yeah, you have a ruptured appendix. We need to get you in for emergency surgery. So I had surgery, ended up staying a week in the hospital, and it had perforated. So it was leaking toxic sludge into my body. I miss a week, come back. I've lost another 30 pounds. They tell me, Eb, and I'd worked they say, Eb, take your time, just get your weight back up, lift. We're not going to make you practice, give it 4 weeks. And I was doing pretty regular blood tests to make sure like my levels of toxicity were continuing to come down to a normal level. And I remember when I had gotten back to practicing, and I'm sitting there in the film room in Chicago, and I'm just in immense pain. I can't turn my head. I've got to pop a pill literally to just sit through the meetings. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching this rep of me in practice, and I'm thinking to myself, man, I used to want to kill that guy, that defensive end. And now I have none of that in me anymore. Like, I love that guy. I love that teammate. And then I'm in so much pain, and I think it's really glorious and heroic to fight through it all. But this coach behind me, God bless him, if I walked out of here tomorrow, he would just plug another guy in there. Mm-hmm. What am I doing? There's 1,000 places, there's 1,000 things I'd rather be doing right now than sitting here doing this. I think my time in football's over. And so at the end of that season, Bears said they weren't going to sign me back. I actually failed a drug test because I took Ritalin on a day when I was out of Adderall and didn't have my prescription.
Oh, no shit.
And I took Ritalin thinking, hey, this is a medication that treats the same thing. Even if I do test positive, I have a really good argument that, hey, I was out of Adderall. I took Ritalin. I didn't realize that, whatever, there would be a discrepancy in the medication and that would lead to a suspension. So I ended up taking this Ritalin from a teammate, tested positive. The end of the season came. I get a letter from the NFL saying you tested positive for this substance. Unless you appeal this and take these XYZ steps, you're going to serve a 4-game suspension leading into next season. And so to me, it was the universe going, Eb, It's okay.
Mm.
You can be done. You know? It's like, okay. The Bears didn't want to sign me back. My wife and I, we made the move back to California. She's from Pasadena. I was like, let's just go set up shop. We'll buy a house in LA. And we'll just take it one day at a time. I think I'm done, And so that started, I'm looking at myself in the mirror going, what the fuck am I going to do, And my wife goes, Eb, you're a writer. It's time to write your book, And so my football agent handed me off to a literary agent. We started working on this book proposal, which was The Offensive Lineman's Life, Charles Bukowski in the Trenches.
I like him.
And
oh, wow.
Put together a really beautiful book proposal, pitched it around to a lot of publishers. They really liked it, got a lot of good feedback, but they wanted either more of the red carpet story or the just something that it wasn't. And that turned into an article I wrote for sportsillustrated.com called What Does It Take to Stay in the NFL, which kind of launched me into my life after football and cannabis advocacy and truth seeking and spreading the word of tuning into yourself and your inner truth. And that was it. And I was actually, as I was working on that book proposal, I was getting phone calls I got calls from the Bills and the Falcons, and they were like, we want to fly you in to work out. We'd love to have you here. And I literally thought to myself, I can't even go to the airport to get on the plane. That's how I feel. I'm so done. And so that was it.
That's got to feel good to have that clarity in a career that 6 in the NFL, but you played some freshman year in high school. So it was your life.
Yeah.
But to just know.
Yeah.
And it never ends like you want it to. But I think by the common metrics of going out on top or whatever, but to have the clarity, I mean, that's how you want it to end, I think.
Absolutely.
Versus you still want to be fucking playing, no one's calling you.
Right. Yeah, which happens to many guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was just, I had the dream of playing 10 years and I'd given it 6 and I felt so clear that I had played this game so hard and so violently for so long and literally left every fucking ounce of myself on the field to the point where I had that feeling in the meeting room of going, what am I doing here? And to have that clarity, I was very blessed in that, because I felt like there was nothing left for me to do. Of course, could have won. I never went to the playoffs. The best football team I was ever on was my last year at Arizona. We went 8-5, beat BYU in the Las Vegas Bowl, which was a really incredible season. I was always on not mediocre teams, but just never a winning team. And that's really difficult to do that. And I honestly felt at the end of the day, I was like, I gave this thing everything I had for as long as I possibly could. And I'm good. I'm ready to move on,
Yeah, it's interesting. It just hearing that, it reminds me of, my moment of, where you say you're in the fucking film room and it's like, why am I doing this? And for me with trading, I was in the business for 18 years and very much a team and brothers and really special vibe. But I had gone through this period of, I don't know how long it was, a year, 18 months, 2 years, where I felt like, to your point, I didn't want to kill that guy anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't have that fire. I didn't understand why I was going, and I was a partner. Just feeling all that shame of not showing up like I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And are you familiar with David Data's work?
Yes.
Way of a Superior
Oh,
Man?
yeah. That was such a powerful book for me.
So I'm sitting in a coffee shop reading that book on a Sunday, and I get to this one part. I think it's chapter 12. It's just like, if you're doing something that no longer inspires you. You could leave it, not have any regrets, and leave this project unfinished. And there's all these different ways he's saying, and he's like, it's time to leave that. And I start crying. I was like, that's it. And it's like all the shame lifted, all the guilt. It's like, I just was there too long.
Yeah.
And it's funny, the last couple of years we were there, we didn't have good years. I think one year, as a partner, I had to write a check to the, to keep our capital reserves where they were. And so I've often joked, it's like nice if I would have left 2 years earlier when I wasn't writing checks, but I actually needed that to be like, dude, like what other sign, to your point, what other sign do you need? You're fucking you're working and writing checks.
Yeah, exactly.
No, dude, it's time. And so I had that clarity as well. And it allowed for a really clean break where I haven't looked back.
Yeah.
And I've had a few times when I've been back in Chicago and, my partner who's amazing, it's just been such an incredible mentor, is like, hey, if you ever are interested in getting, there's some, whatever, like we're open. And almost to your point, like I couldn't even make it to the airport. I was like, I was fucking done.
Yeah.
I appreciated the offer.
Yeah.
Because it was authentic. But yeah, it wasn't for me. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about, post-career. Just in our conversation before we started, I'd love to tap into, you being this energy center, this shaman of the team, into that role you're stepping to in real life, and what really birthed that and how it feels today. Because I think it's fairly new. Yeah.
It's definitely new.
By the way, and I don't want to forget to mention this before we finish here. Have people told you have like an incredible voice?
Yes.
Like, dude, holy shit. It's like,
thank you, man.
Masculine, but it's got a nice little, anyway.
I appreciate
love listening
that, man.
To you talk.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah. So going back, way back to childhood, I always had this innate curiosity of exploring the unseen realms of my human existence.
Where does that come from as a young man? Because I didn't tap into that until my first mushroom experience 4 years ago.
I had this from the time I was a little kid. There's a lot of darkness in my childhood. There was a lot of chaos, alcoholism, depression, with my family. My parents were going through so much during my childhood. It was really just a chaotic environment all the way. My parents got divorced when I was 7. And when my parents got divorced, I felt as though I had to become the alpha of my household.
As a 7-year-old.
And I had to keep my brother safe and my mom safe, and she was really struggling and my dad was struggling, and both going through their own things, as we do. But I always had this intuitive notion that there was a higher energy guiding my life. There was a higher power at work. It informed so much of my life. Like everything I've ever done has been a God mission, like football. I wrote about it in the book. Football, I remember being at my grandparents' house in Connecticut, and when my parents got divorced, part of the divorce agreement, the custody agreement, was basically my dad had us Wednesday nights and on the weekends, but then we spent the entire summer with my dad. And my dad's an artist. He had this little apartment in Brooklyn. And to his credit, he was like, I'm getting these boys out into the country in the summer. And we'd go spend 3 months in the summer at my grandparents' house in Connecticut and just spend entire days at the park playing every sport known to man and just watching great movies and listening to great music and spending it in the sun and the rolling hills of Connecticut. And it was just that was so important for me. Such an important part of my upbringing, and especially how it informed my athleticism and my love for sports. And there was this one summer day, and I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and it was in the morning. I'm eating my cereal, and the news is on, the morning news is on, and they're showing clips of the Jets and the Giants in training camp. And I remember seeing these warriors on the gridiron, and I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to be one of those warriors. And I saw football as this vehicle for me to transcend the chaos of my childhood.
And were you a normal sized kid, or
I was always the biggest kid.
Okay.
You know, I was always the biggest kid in all my classes. So in that way, football was, I wasn't necessarily, that came to me. It just was part of it. It wasn't really, there wasn't a trying, there wasn't a going in, there wasn't a thing of trying to make it happen or trying to do it or trying to be a part. It was just that's it.
So you were tapped into your intuition from a very young age.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually through my football career, I became really disconnected from that. And I think it has a lot to do with the vicious cycle of having to constantly override the natural pain mechanisms of your body.
And the trauma and the shame and the guilt of
absolutely.
All that. It's that shit's bad. You ain't bad.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fuck.
So this idea of being very interested and inclined in the unseen realms of my experience gravitated me towards cannabis at a pretty young age. I always had I was curious. I was like, what is that thing? What is that experience like? What will that do for me? And I even remember, I think it was in high school or something, it came to me to go on a peyote exploration. I never did it. But
it was in your field.
It was just that would be something really interesting. I would love to do that. Go into the desert and do a peyote adventure,
Very un-high school like.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't even really know where it came from. But it was just sort of this thing. And so I tried cannabis for the first time. It was probably after my junior year of football. And we went over to a teammate's house. And I got so fucking high. I got so high, like beyond anything I'd ever experienced, and had this really terrifying experience, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
I had this just incredibly terrifying experience, and ended up walking basically 3 miles home with my buddy Juan, who's my best friend in the world. And we walked home together 3 miles super stoned, and it was just this odyssey of getting home and being completely my whole perspective, my whole perception of myself and my life and the world was just obliterated. And I never really came back to cannabis because it was oh fuck, this stuff requires and demands respect and a certain level of, this isn't that party thing that I thought maybe it was. This isn't really just for fun type of thing. This is something that changes the lens of your life and how you view everything.
I'd love to pause and have you go deeper into what we were talking about before, because that was your explanation for how it hits people differently. Really, for me, really resonated. And so I think it would be great for everyone to just have maybe a little more understanding about what a plant like cannabis does for different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Cannabis is a really interesting thing because at one point it was a staple even in American pharmacopoeia, like up until 1937, the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act, where cannabis, the growth, cultivation, distribution, and sale of cannabis was made completely illegal by Harry Anslinger, who was the head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics that turned into the DEA, and William Randolph Hearst and the DuPont family. And they viewed cannabis as a very detrimental substance to their industries of profit. So they came out with the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act. And up until that point, I mean, cannabis goes back 10,000 years, probably even more, as far as being a medicinal herb for humankind. And since then, through prohibition and the hyper demonization of it and reefer madness and all of this stuff, cannabis took on this role of being this thing that was made completely illegal, a Schedule I substance, which is totally insane.
Explain to people what Schedule 1 means.
So Schedule 1 basically means there is no medicinal value. You can't research it. It's completely locked down. You're going to prison if you possess, consume, cultivate, do anything with this plant. And so it's basically legislatively locked down as far as access to it and being able to use it. And of course, because it's this God-given herb, God-given plant, it's even in the midst of that, it has continued to emerge and make itself available to people throughout the West and throughout the world. So going back to your question, some people spend their entire lives just smoking weed, and it's like a thing. It's like nice. It takes them to that place. It gives them comfort. It's really like warm and comforting and brings them a certain state of calm. And in my own experience and my own evolution of my own cannabis use, where it initially was this really terrifying thing, and then it became a very therapeutic thing through my football career when I was in this highly traumatized state, physically, emotionally, mentally. And it became really my go-to remedy throughout my football career, to now where I can barely have a puff of a joint. And if I have just a slight smudge too much, I'm just blasted off into to the end of the universe. And I have to spend the next 2 hours breathing, do hape, just like bringing myself back down to earth. And frankly, at this stage in my life, I don't need to spend any time in that, so, and I really attribute it to the level of inner awareness and the level of clarity of self. And so, I mean, in the framework of the ethos of this podcast, The Great Unlearn, we spend so much time, we walk through so much of our life completely unconscious and asleep, and just in this state of mechanization where we're just kind of programmed robots, really. We're programmed with the culture, our family, ideology, religion, education, all of this stuff. It's just programmed us into a certain way of being, where there are all of these layers and veils over the truth of who and what we are. And so, as for me, you look at some people and they just kind of use cannabis super casually, and especially as it's become much more accepted and it's become recreationally legal in some states and medicinally legal in some states, and the accessibility of it has just expanded and grown so much. And it still is this profound substance that has high intelligence to it, and it interacts with our cells on a very deep level and transfers immense amounts of information to us as we all have an endocannabinoid system where we produce actually our own endogenous cannabinoids like anandamide and 2-AEG. Anandamide, the bliss molecule, which are mirror replicas of THC and other cannabinoids that are found in the cannabis plant. But so as we're living in that unconscious state, cannabis can be this thing that sort of peaks us into a more conscious state of being, where we're more tuned into the profundity of our human existence, of this thing that we inhabit, this body, and the universe, and all of the stuff that we're a part of, a particle of this massive God consciousness. And so as we go through life and we unlearn and we become more and more conscious and we polish the crystal, as the great Swami Vivekananda said way back, the first yogi to come to America and preach the teachings of yoga, and how at the end of the day, metaphysically speaking, somewhere inside of us is this prism, this, you could call it a crystal of perception, where light comes in, and that light is transferred into our perception and how we view the world and how we view ourselves and our connection with the inner God self that we are all have within us. And through all of these practices of meditation and yoga and plant medicine and all of these things, and cleaning up our nutrition and cleaning up our lives and emotionally and physically and mentally, and we begin to polish this crystal and giving us this higher and higher and higher state of awareness, self and external. And I guess at the end of the day, it's all self-awareness, because we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. And so when you get to this place of a certain level of awareness, cannabis can actually begin to have this, there's polarity in everything. There's positive and negative. There's yin and yang in everything. There's darkness and light in everything. And so cannabis, at one stage in my life, it was very therapeutic, very comforting, very helpful in my highly traumatized state. But as I've healed a lot of that trauma and healed those wounds, and I've polished that crystal and come into this higher level of awareness in myself and the truth of who I am and what I am, cannabis now has this thing where it takes me so deep into the awareness, where I'm so tuned into this mind-blowing truth of having a beating heart inside this body, of having these organs and this brain and a nervous system, and how that's all interconnected, and all the vastness of this human experience. It's fucking terrifying. And we're not really meant to live in that minutia of awareness,
Mm-hmm.
And so cannabis, or any substance for that matter, as it is a great teacher, and it catapults you or rocket launches you into this infinity of the experience of our human existence, it can just be inhibitory in our evolution at one point, and so just like anything, it's the medicine and the poison are one entity. And it's in the amount, it's in the way we use it, it's in our relationship to it, that either one of those faces is revealed.
Yeah, dude, and thank you, because that beautifully articulates my personal experience with it. Because for years I could get high, and it didn't matter how high I was just having a good time and laughing, and maybe I was a little bit comatose, but none of that stuff was coming up. And I think a couple years ago, I went on a hike with a buddy of mine. He brings out a joint, and we smoke it, and I feel like it's almost like an LSD experience, and I felt really good where I was, but it was like, whoa, what is this? I've never had that experience with it. And I feel like, because of, as you said, like the work I've done, I have such a different relationship with cannabis that I'm just not called to it. I don't
Yeah.
want to go into that. I want to like giggle if I do cannabis.
Right. You want to enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
You want to feel lightened, not super. The only way I can really describe it, the sensation of consuming too much cannabis, which for me can be literally like a hair's difference between me experiencing what I'm looking for and me exploding out of myself.
Yep.
And at this stage in my life where I want to be locked in, I want to be the highest version of myself at all times and always seeking to be the highest aspect of myself and to tune into that state. Cannabis is not helping me do that anymore.
So what is today when you want to have that experience where you're not blasted off, but you go deeper and you get some clarity on these things? What do you like? What do you go to now?
Meditation and breath work are the foundation of it all for me. And then psilocybin, microdosing psilocybin has become really one of my partners at this stage. It's just, I feel super grounded. I feel super tuned into the heart space. I feel super fluid and activated. And, you know, at the end of the day too, I know and I recognize that at some point that this medicine may run its course and I may be on to, you know, for me, Cal, as I continue to polish the crystal and become more and more clean and clear, I feel as though there's really nothing I need anymore. You know, feel free is kind of a wonderful thing that gives me everything I'm looking for. Because at the end of the day, man, with addiction, with any substance use, any plant medicine use, we're all looking to experience God. We're all looking to experience that, to fill that hole, you know, that God-sized hole inside of us that started somewhere long ago when we came upon or developed this false belief of being unworthy or not being loved the way we needed to be. And any consumption is about filling that hole with whatever we can. It's alcohol, it's sex, it's other people, it's substances, it's, you know, and at the end of the day, the more whole we become, the less we need to fill that hole, you know? And so, for me now, meditation and breath work are the foundation. Yoga is a profound part of my life. And I'm so grateful, you know, my parents, I have such beautiful relationships with both my mom and dad. And I'm just so grateful for them in what they provided me with throughout my childhood, which was they're both very holistically minded people who believe food is medicine. You move your body to keep it in the best shape possible, drink plenty of water, get sunlight, have meaningful relationships, and use whatever natural means are available before you go to a doctor to be prescribed one thing or another. And that was such a powerful foundation for me, and it has informed literally everything I've ever done. My life as an athlete, and that having that intuitive sense of when I took those opiates and I took those prescription anti-inflammatories, which, you know, we don't even talk about, but every single guy, 98% of guys on every NFL team is on a daily regimen of some prescription anti-inflammatory or another, whether it's Indocin or Cataflam, Celebrex, these things that just wreak havoc on your digestive system, your liver and kidneys. And there's another way, you know, and I don't know that I would have had that sense of, wow, this thing that I'm getting from the doctor, who's my trusted source of medication and pain relief, this thing really is fucking me up. This is putting me into a worse state than it found me in. And I was already injured. I was already depleted. I was already vulnerable. And now not only am I all of those things, but now I'm in this chemical chaos where I don't even know where I begin and this thing ends and where I fit in the midst of all of it. And so today, you know, I stumbled upon meditation a couple years out of my career. It was 2016. My entire life was coming like a tidal wave and just crashing over me. And I was completely overwhelmed with confronting myself and the reality of my life and decisions I had made and the mistakes I had made and the wreckage I had caused. And I talk about it in the book where it really, the rock bottom was watching myself on the phone on my way to this CBD company I had started called Be True Organics, yelling into the phone in a fight with my wife saying, I'm going to kill myself or I'm going to kill somebody. And thankfully my wife went literally, I think from that call, drove to my mom's house in tears, said, I don't know what to do. Eb's completely falling apart. I'm really concerned and please help. And I got a call from my mom later that day. And she was like, Eb, how you doing? I just knew she knew, you know. And I was like, I don't know. I'm super grateful for the people, you know. Super grateful for the people that have just been here for me and supported me, you know. My mom said, why don't you come over and have dinner? I went over there. I had dinner with my mom and my aunt and my brother. And you know, they said, Ed, this is our family trauma, you know. This is alcoholism. This is all of our history. Why don't you try an Al-Anon meeting? You know, it's like, what? My brother had been going to Al-Anon. I went to this Al-Anon meeting. It was a men's group, and I walked in there just like cloaked in shit and shame and guilt and horror and like complete unworthiness. And I sat down in a chair and this guy started talking, and it was like he was just talking about my childhood. You know, like having to take care of everybody, having to be responsible for everybody, the resentment, the shame, the guilt, never feeling like you were emotionally supported or loved the way you needed to be, and how that informed everything I did in my life. And it just like broke me open, man. You know, it just like broke my heart fucking wide open. And that just like really, you know, started this slow process of just coming back to myself. Because I'd been so far away for so long. And understanding that there were people out there, like there's tools, there's love, there's all kinds of things that we're not in it alone. You know?
That's the, you know, for me, it's been a bit like my journey is just feeling like I have to be resilient. I've got this. I don't need anyone's help. I can do it. And then when I've needed help and I've had the courage, right? The courage to receive it. It's been the hardest thing. But on the other side of that, it's like, oh, fuck. Fucking people show up.
Yeah, man.
And it's just a reminder that I don't have to go alone, you know? And my wife, she's here for me. Like, can I let her in to nurture me?
Yeah.
Because I need that. And it's hard to admit that. It's not hard to admit it here, but when the chips are down, it's hard.
Yeah. One of the hardest things. That's been the ultimate journey for me, man. It's like having the courage to ask for help, having the courage to step out of isolation, you know, step into the beautiful tools that are all around.
Yeah, it is. It's like easy to, isolation, to get in there and get done what you need to get done. And
as men, I mean, that's how we're programmed, you
that's
know?
it.
It's like we're programmed like, you got to be strong. You got to be fucking hard. You can't show weakness. You got to go and make it happen. You got to go provide. You got to go get it done. On a genetic level and then on a cultural level, you know, because we're the fucking hunters. We're supposed to be out hunting. And here we are in this Western civilized paradigm that we find ourselves in. And there isn't a hunt. And we find that, we seek that through our profession, through whatever things we're using to make money or earn income or show our worthiness to the world. And then, you know, it's on us, I think, in this day and age, especially, as it's been a really interesting ride, man. Like, I feel like I've only begun, and that book, Way of the Superior Man, was so profound for me in stepping into the truth of my masculinity. Like, what does that really fucking mean? You know? And I feel like over and over again, it lies in the vulnerability. That's the true warrior essence. You know, I used to think the warrior shit was throwing the fucking spear, dominating other individuals. But the true warrior is found, the warrior's true essence is found in the vulnerability, jumping into the unknown over and over again. Being willing to say, I don't know. I don't have this.
Yeah, that right there. I don't know. I mean, that's, I don't have this. And just the more, like, I know for me, just like stepping into, just really understanding that there's a lot I don't know. What I do know is what my personal experience is, but it's allowed me to be a lot more curious. And then, you know, like the true learning comes after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
But what a gift for you to have your mom and your aunt and your brother to show up for you, you know, and I mean, your mom and dad are an anomaly. Like that's so rare.
Yeah.
Now, I think today there are kids like your daughter who's going to grow up with that. But that having that in your household to grow up with, like, whew.
Yeah, I'm so grateful, man. I'm really so grateful for them. And like, whether it was conscious or not, just the the net that they provided.
That's it. Like safety.
Yeah.
Right. For me, that's what, like,
Yeah.
I want my kids to know that they're safe with me.
Yes. Beyond anything else.
That's it.
There's nothing more important.
You can always, like, you're always going to be okay, even if there's some shit going on. I'm not going to protect you from it. You've got to learn your own lessons.
Yeah.
But that there's nothing I can't handle.
Right.
So don't, it's like, for me, it's all about building the bridge of trust with them.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
And it changes, right? I was sharing earlier, I won't share the story on here, but like that, that's like, how do I want to show up?
Yeah.
What for my child in this moment, what is going to serve her in the highest?
Yes.
And it's not what we were taught. Maybe you were taught it actually, but it's not what society is teaching us, how to parent in that situation.
Yes.
Right. And so it's like, take a beat. Okay. What's like, how am I meant to be in this relationship in this moment? And it may be different the next time, but.
Yeah. I think our parents are such a influential part of this experience of, I know for me, as I've really come into adulthood, so much of my life has been about coming to terms with myself and being okay with myself and accepting myself and loving myself. And if you grow up in a household where you made a mistake and then your parents treated you as though you made a mistake and you fucked up, even if it could just be a hair of that, just like hair difference of whatever it was that made you feel like, I'm not safe to be myself. I'm not safe to share my heart. I'm not safe to be vulnerable. I'm not safe to share my fuck ups. Then it becomes this slowly but surely, like one step at a time. And then you find yourself and you're a 30-year-old man and you've spent the last 15 years just completely abandoning yourself because you've never thought it was okay to just be you. And that journey back to, I'm a human. It's okay to fuck up. And to your point, I've thought to myself, beyond anything else, all I care about with my daughter is that she knows unequivocally and has complete trust in that no matter what she does, goes through, happens to her, experiences, she can always come to me and I'm a safe place for her. To set the tone of you, beyond anything else, loving yourself and accepting yourself completely, unconditionally is the only thing that matters in life.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Pardon My Take? Podcast on Barstool?
Oh, yeah, of course.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's actually one of the few podcasts I listen to because it's just
that's hilarious.
Fucking entertaining.
Yeah, they're amazing.
So they had Bert Kreischer on recently, who is so fucking hilarious.
Yeah,
and
hilarious.
The whole episode was great, but in it, he talks about his daughter who was 16, and she got caught smoking weed by the mom. She comes and tells Bert. Bert fucking loses his shit. Fucking does, the typical response.
Yeah, of course.
And he had this fucking epiphany. I can't do this. Like, she's going to think she can't fuck up ever.
Exactly.
So he went to her and he apologized. He's like, look, like, and it was like, again, not expecting to have this nugget.
Yeah.
And
Pardon My Take.
Yeah. And he just so perfectly shared, honestly, like what my intentions are as a dad. And it's like, I want my kids to know it's okay to fuck up. There are consequences, and it's
of course,
maybe, you know, they don't come down entirely for me. Maybe, you know, there are other things, you know, that will, oh, thank you.
Got the bags rolling, man.
Yes. Got Gino mixing them up over there.
Dude, this is such a pleasure, Cal. Thank you so much for this.
Brother, I mean, again, I knew as I was starting to listen to some of your podcasts, I was like, ugh, it's going to be so good to be in this space with you. And
totally,
I'm already thinking, like, I can't wait for you to come back and we'll do it again. And
yeah, absolutely.
Because there's so much to cover. And I know we've been here for a bit. And so I'd love to, you know, to begin to wrap up. And I mean, I don't know. I'd love to hear, you know, what's alive for you today? What is it that gets you out of bed, that you're super excited about, that you don't even think about it?
I've been asked this question a few times, you know, because I've published my first book, The Ebb and Flow, Basic Tools to Transform Your Life, which is basically my life from childhood through the NFL, how I emerged from that physically, mentally, emotionally destroyed, and the tools I use to put myself back together.
But by the way, I just want to note, so I'm in the process of writing a book, and one of the things that I'm super clear on, and you talk about in your book, it's like you call it the anti-system system. There's so much fucking bullshit out there about the 10 steps, do this, follow exactly what I do in this order, wake up at 5, go run 8 miles. Like, it's all fucking bullshit.
Yeah, totally.
And I really felt from you, like, if I were to write this book, I would write it this way. And so I fucking love it.
Awesome.
It's very approachable. Try it, don't try it. This is, you know, this is the science behind it. This is why it worked for me. And it's just, it's an invitation. And there's no like, so I just wanted to make sure I shared that. It's so beautiful.
I appreciate that, man. That was really important for me, because a note on that, before I get to, you know, what gets me up every day. You know, I've tried a lot of things. I've tried a lot of diets. I've done fucking vegan. I've done paleo. I've done keto. I've done all kinds of stuff. Now I'm pretty carnivore, animal based. I would say 80% animal based, and I have some fruit. I have honey. I have occasionally potato here and there, a cup of rice every once in a while. Because I feel like, at least in my new stage, I'm about 247. I've never been so fucking lean and shredded and energized ever in my life. And I feel like my body does really well with a little bit of carbs.
Yeah, I'm similar to you. Not quite obviously your size, but that composition works really well without a lot of constriction around it. It's like if I'm go to 70%, you know, protein, and then I'm okay with it, which has been a major shift for me to like relax. Fucking.
I mean, that's like my life practice now is, Ebb, it doesn't have to be so hard.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like we can enjoy ourselves in this thing.
Walk through the front door.
Hey, just open the door, man. What are you doing? You're trying to hop the fence, go in the fucking back, you know? You're trying to fucking like taking the battering ram through the front wall. It's like, dude, just open the door. That's it.
Yeah.
But you know, I've tried a lot of stuff. I've trained with elite level strength coaches, and my mother is honestly a yogini master. She's got a master in yogic science and is a master body worker and has an understanding of anatomy, physiology, neurochemistry beyond anything I've ever really come across in my life. Like, I was talking to my mom the other day, and she was talking about the physiology of memory and how trauma memories manifest in the physical body. And I was like, Mom, you're a fucking wizard.
Yes.
You know?
Wow.
And, you know, I've tried a lot of things, and the only truth that has revealed itself to me through all of that and experiencing all these different modalities and diets and training programs and all this stuff is like, the only thing that matters is what works for you.
Yes.
You know, like what? Because consistency is the main key, you know? And I've really gotten to this place where, man, I don't drink any alcohol anymore.
Yeah.
I don't even have like the cheat days now are like a sweet potato.
Yeah.
You know?
Or a smoothie. Yeah.
Yeah. Or a fucking smoothie from Sun Life, you know? God bless Khalil.
And I love you said consistency, because the shadow side of that is something that I experienced, and it sounds like you have too, is rigidity.
Yes.
And it's like fucking creates so much stress. And I was honestly just a fucking prick to be around when I tried to do all those things.
The final chapter is flexibility is fundamental.
Ugh.
You know, John Wooden said it best. Flexibility is the key to stability. You know?
Cheers to that.
And so all of it, you know, whatever it is, just find the thing that works for you and experiment and dabble. And there's a lot of incredible information out there, you know, and that's always a problem for me, is like the people who say, this is the way. This is the only way to make it happen, to have the body you want, to live the life. It's like, that's bullshit, man.
And you just like, now for me, it's like, now I have the awareness that you're just trying to fucking sell me something.
Yeah, exactly. It's a brand, it's a marketing scheme, you know?
No matter how well it's written and how well it's quote unquote researched.
Yeah, exactly. Because there will always be, not every body type is the same. No, everybody's DNA and genetics are totally different, and their chemical composition of how their body, their cells interact with various inputs. There's infinite variables, you know? So I appreciate you saying that. And I'm glad that comes through. That was really important for me in writing this. You know, I wanted to create something that was super accessible for the layman, you know, put it into layman's terms. You know, I've come across a lot of incredible people, high level people. I've done a lot of studying. I would say so much of my life after football, even throughout football, it was like studying was a super important aspect of my understanding myself, how my body works, what works for me, and learning as much as I can. Gathering information. But so as I've published this book and I've got my podcast and I'm really stepping into this greatness coaching, shamanism position of being a guide for people. And I've been getting this question, Eb, what are your goals? I'm like, man, that's interesting. It's an interesting question.
Such an old, for me, it's such an old paradigm.
Yeah, it's
I don't have goals like that. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah, exactly, man. And I said, it has taken me immediately. My intuitive answer has become, beyond living a life that is anchored in the heart, that's full of love and joy, my only goal is to help people be the greatest version of themselves and to be of service in that way, you know? And outside of that, I don't know. I don't really have any goals. Just going to keep doing it.
Yeah, it's like, it sounds like you just tune in to be present with you know, what's opening up in your field, and you're just tracking that stuff, right? To bring in Boyd's, you know, idea of just tracking.
Yes.
Right. And just tuning in to the heart and not getting up in the mind where it's a, you know, fucking disaster up there trying to figure out what you're supposed to do versus what am I called to do?
Exactly.
And it makes it so easy, doesn't it?
Yeah. The mind is a fucking maze of confusion, you know?
It is.
I mean, anything for me throughout my life, I can literally look throughout my life, anything that has been a mind trip or an ego trip or some form of me trying to will my way into something happening has been a complete disaster.
Yes.
And the shit that just opens up and effortlessly unfolds, that the universe just brings right in front of me, that's always the thing that I'm supposed to do, you know? And my life has really become what's getting up every morning. I'm like, let's just see where we are right now. Let's take one step at a time, take another breath, one day at a time, keep moving forward, being of service, anchored in love and joy. And that's it.
That's where like the magic is. Wow.
That's it.
And you know, I do want to just mention so people don't quite misunderstand you when you said your life, you know, certainly since football has been about learning and kind of understanding, anchored in that, right? And in the study is you pull from that and then you go have your own experience.
Yes.
And that's where it is. So folks, don't just think you're going to read books and figure it out. You have to apply that for your life and see if what's working for Eb is going to work for you. And if it does, awesome. If it doesn't, all good. Like, try something else. Keep playing, like experiment. Like that's for me, like you, like I'm fucking curious. Like I'm willing to, you know, play on some edges just to see what the fuck's out there. I want to see my life through these different experiences.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, that's an important aspect, you know. I think that it's interesting to me how at whatever point, there's a great book that I bring up a lot because I think it's an important illustration of the evolution of consciousness. It's called The Secret History of the World by Mark Booth. Have you ever read it?
No, not familiar with it.
So he looks at the history of humanity through the lens of the ancient mystery schools, the Freemasons, the Golden Dawn, the Rosicrucians, these ancient mystery schools that date back to ancient Egypt that really are all about helping man on his path, man, woman, on their path towards self-realization, utilizing Hermetic alchemy and ancient principles of the metaphysical and physical natural laws of the universe, how it functions. And in that book, he does a really beautiful job of illustrating our evolution of consciousness. And he talks about, for instance, when we read Greek mythology, today we look at it and we call it mythology. It's allegory. It's metaphor. We say, oh, you know, when those people are talking to demigods or having interactions with gods and fairies or nymphs and all these different interdimensional or fantastical beings, we go, you know, that's mythology, that's allegory, etc. But he argues that no, consciousness was in such a fluid state during that time that we were actually more in tune with these unseen entities, intelligences that would speak to us, that would whisper in our ear. And through this really interesting process, and perhaps he argues necessary process of the materialization or concretization of consciousness, where now, no, those intelligences, those voices that we hear, those inner insights that we get, those are less real than this table in front of us, than this couch, than the solid things that we find ourselves in that make up the world around us. And at some point, we gave the keys of the castle to our human experience to the mind. And the problem with the mind is it can only function in the realm of the known, the rational, the logical, what it's seen, heard, experienced, read. And our task today, and what I believe is happening, what I see is happening, is this journey back into the heart. And the heart is tuned into the unknown. It functions on the level of intuition. It's tuned into the eternity and infinity of the universe, this thing that we're all a part of. And so if we can just one day at a time, one moment at a time, tune back into our intuition, into our heart space, we can get out of the mind traps that we all find ourselves in modern day life, where it's all about, you know, doing the things, making it happen, willing our way to God, willing our way to success, etc., and just step into our fucking divine purpose of what we were built and manifested and brought into this physical dimension to actually do and be. You know, like that's what we're doing, you know? And it's just about getting out of the mind and just allowing those insights to happen. That thing that keeps appearing in your mind space, that thought that keeps bubbling up from somewhere in the abyss of your being, maybe that's something to actually follow rather than turning away from and thinking that's totally a crazy idea, you know, to leave your job or to go and start that thing or to do the podcast or to write the book or to paint the painting or whatever it is, you know, take the walk. You know, it's like, if we can tune into that still small voice, that inner guide that's always with us, that's always been with us, then we can step into our true destiny, our true purpose.
Dude, what's the name of that book again?
Secret History of the World by Mark Booth.
All right, we'll definitely link to that, and I'm going to order it on Amazon when we're done here. It sounds amazing.
It's really an incredible book.
And do you feel like plant medicine experiences get you to a state where you can start to feel into what those are?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, you know, my journey into plant medicine was really, it's been a journey, you know? And when I started, I talk about my introduction to it, which was really through one of my great mentors, Kirk Westwood, who brought me to my first combo ceremony. Have you done combo?
I haven't. I was called to it about 1.5 years ago, and I just...
Combo is one of my favorites. It's an ultimate purging experience, physical, emotional, spiritual, mental cleansing. You know, it's profound. But through the experience of coming into plant medicine and having this curiosity, which I then started to augment with getting educated, reading all the books I could. The Cosmic Serpent by Jeremy Narby.
Love that. Yeah.
Such a great book. How to Change Your Mind by Michael Pollan. Learning as much as I could. And what's interesting to me about all the books on plant medicine, everything that we come across in the mainstream realm, you know, it's really, we get hung up on the fantastical visionary experiences, the snakes and the fucking conversations with interdimensional beings and, you know, all that stuff. And that's cool. That's really interesting and important. But at the end of the day, what all of these molecules do is they're just bringing us right back to ourselves. They're bringing us right back through all the bullshit, dropping us deep down into the heart space. And that's it. You know, and then the work becomes, hey, how do I tune into the heart? Because a lot of people, man, like, you know, all of this stuff has become super trendy.
Big time.
You know, especially in LA, you know, my Kirk
would very trendy here too.
Yeah, I know, of course. And that's good and perhaps an important part of the process.
Sure.
But as my great mentor Kirk would say, there's people up in Topanga Canyon doing ayahuasca ceremonies every weekend who can't find their fucking car keys, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like, at some point, you need to realize that the work goes beyond the medicine and your life is the work in itself, you know? And that's where meditation comes in. And that's where, and meditation is so key because that's kind of that's that super accessible modality that we can let go of all the shit, all the mind noise, quiet it down to the point where we can actually tune into that truth that emanates from our heart constantly. So yeah.
Beautiful. And I actually, before we wrap, we had mentioned it earlier. let's talk. Give the audience a bit behind the Den ritual and the work there that you guys are doing and creating.
So the Den ritual, in the conduit of it is Gino Mattiota, my soul brother here. He's an amazing human being, an absolute medicine man in his own right. And he wanted to bring forth this space, this environment that is truly a heart-centered wellness space that could provide people with a reprieve from the hyper-paced speed of daily, the daily commercial, commerce, entrepreneurial trip, and so it's cold tubs, it's saunas, it's hyperbaric chambers, it's a meditation space, it's a community, it's a social wellness club at the end of the day, a place to come and cleanse yourself, to get clean, to tune into the truth of your being, to get clear, to get energized, to tune into that highest aspect of yourself through very elite level modalities that are rightfully so becoming super popular these days. Cold exposure, saunas, meditation, hyperbaric, these really profound biohacking modalities that introduce people to their heart center, to themselves, and I think that's very much needed, especially as we continued into this digital realm with, the VR stuff and NFTs and cryptocurrency, and as commerce becomes more and more digitized, which it inevitably will be. And I think technology, it's one of those things, like I said, everything has a yin and yang, a darkness and a light. And while technology can be this overwhelmingly consuming entity, it's also a profound tool. Like here we are, we can record this podcast and it can be distributed to millions and millions of people around the world for anyone to access. And so as we continue down this road of more and more digital, the necessity of more and more digitized life, there's going to be a profound need for spaces and experiences that the Den ritual will provide people with, of tuning back into themselves, getting back in touch with the source of their ultimate being.
Awesome. I love it. I think it's so important. And you guys are opening in Chicago soon.
Chicago will be the first one, opening in June.
And then scoping out some property down here in Austin.
Definitely.
And then you'll come down here and tend it.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, man, I'm really, Austin feels like home, so we're navigating that too. I think I see myself moving here as well at some point soon.
I love it.
Yeah.
I look forward to that.
Me too, man.
How can people find you?
Find me on Instagram at EDS Britton, on Twitter at EDS Britton. I don't use Twitter that much. On TikTok at Eben Britton. Go to my website, ebenbritton.com. Buy my book on Amazon.
Your podcast.
My podcast, The Eben Flow, available on all podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, I'm pretty sure we're on all the platforms, whatever people use. Spotify and Apple, of course, are kind of the main hubs. I think people access it, but
and then you do some coaching, some one-on-one coaching, yeah?
I do one-on-one and corporate wellness coaching.
Great.
So yes, that's available as well. And you can contact me at contact@ebenbritton.com.
Awesome. Dude, you're a motherfucking gangster. And I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, man.
This has been awesome, really special.
Absolutely, Cal.
Fucking
Thank
soul
you.
brother.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super grateful, man. Thanks for having me.